Hey, how do you feel about some high rarity cards, or maybe some foreign ones, or maybe be ahead of the game with others by preparing for future set releases with very quick shipping? Check out EJ Gaming and use code British5 on checkout for 5% off on all your orders. Link in the description.
Greetings, duelists, and welcome to another video. So, Age of Overlord is about to be released. This is a really game-changing set, as we already know. One deck I haven't spoken about, or I haven't done a dedicated video on, prior to this set release, is Vanquish Soul. I kind of wanted to leave Vanquish Soul for last because it is a deck that, despite me doing well and having a track record with it, and me showcasing the deck as a whole here in the past in this channel, it is the deck that I had the least amount of testing when it comes to Age of Overlord, because I feel like there are only two new cards. The dynamic of the deck is not going to change a lot in terms of what the deck can do. However, the deck is going to advert less of its weaknesses that it had prior to this set release. So without further ado, let's begin. I'm going to talk about the two new cards, and then I'm going to talk about how this greatly benefits the archetype, and things to consider when you're playing Vanquish Soul moving forward when it comes to these cards being released. The first card we're going to talk about is Vanquish Soul Jiaolong. It is a level 5 fire worm type monster with 24/21. Its effect reads: if you reveal a card in the hand to activate a Vanquish Soul, card's effect. That means any card, doesn't have to be a monster. You can special summon this card from your hand. Quick effect: you can activate one of these effects by revealing one monster in your hand with the listed attributes. Fire: change the battle position of one monster on the field. Fire and fire: add one Vanquish Soul card from your deck to your hand except Jiaolong. You can only use this effect once per turn, and you cannot use them more than once per chain. That's pretty much tied to all the Vanquish Souls. So, a lot to talk about this card. Prior to this card's release, Vanquish Soul lacked a lot of fire monsters. The only fire monsters that we actually had that are themed with the archetype were Pluton and Rosin. And just having another fire monster is a really big deal, because firstly, it is another monster you can reveal for Stake Your Soul. Secondly, it is a monster that gives you more dynamic with the cards that already work alongside it. For example, Rosin needs a fire monster to reveal for its effect, at least for one of its effects, and that means that prior to the summon of Rosin, now a new line can be Rosin adding the Jiaolong, revealing the Jiaolong for Rosin's effect, and then just summoning the Jiaolong. One thing that Vanquish Soul severely lacked before Jiaolong's release was really good extender monsters outside of Pantera and the Rock of the Vanquisher. Now the Jiaolong itself is another extender, meaning that if your opponent tries to pick apart your board, or your opponent tries to disrupt your normal summon, you have other ways and other means of just summoning more monsters, because Jiaolong itself can be served as an extender. Another really cool thing about Jiaolong is that both of these effects are really strong effects. The first fire effect, changing the battle position of a monster in the field, this might not look like the best effect in hindsight, but this also fixes a lot of problems that Vanquish Soul already had. One big weakness is that it gives the deck a lot more lines of defense if your opponent is trying to pick apart your board by battle phase. If we remember Rock of the Vanquisher, the Rock of the Vanquisher makes it so the opponent is forced to attack other monsters. However, one big issue with Rock is that once that monster dies, or once there are no more Vanquish Souls, you cannot perform as optimally defensively with your plays, meaning that you're open for more OTKs, you're open for more your opponent breaking your board or picking apart your board a lot quicker. Let's take Purely for an example. If you're facing the Purely deck, you already know that they have the Purely Street, and they try to resolve the the happiness. Well, now with the existence of Jiaolong, you have a monster that can change the battle position of a monster, and it does not target, meaning that even under the purely street, the purely happiness cannot run over your monsters, which is another thing that really benefits you. Another really cool thing about Jiaolong is that it just summons another body. So if your opponent just tries to like go for game and like tries to like pick apart your board, just summoning another monster and that monster being able to change the battle position just makes it so your opponent is harder to get rid of your board like outright. This is also a card that just gives you more card advantage. Like if you like have multiple copies of like fire monsters, because every single turn you can just grab cards that you can use to either extend your plays or use as follow up. So the design behind Jiaolong is a little bit unorthodox at first, but after like a lot of testing, like you will slowly realize that this really does actually benefit the deck and really does fix like a few of the glaring weaknesses that it had outright. Asking for 2 fires, it is a hefty condition, especially since you only have enough fire monsters in the archetype, and the only non-engine fire monsters that you usually run are stuff like Ash Blossom. However, if you max out on Razin and you max out on Jiaolong, that's already 6 fire monsters. Ash Blossom makes it 9, and Pluton already makes it 10. And that's without counting like other fire monsters that you can play. At least like for example, on my build, I'm playing Dogoron and Kurikara. This is not something you should be doing, but it is something to consider if you just want more fire names for like Jiaolong's effect. You can also play other monsters like Lava Golem, like stuff like that. The Rescue Ace, Impulse, and Fire Attacker are other example of cards that you can play alongside this. Overall, like really really excellent card. I'm not gonna put this at 10 out of 10, but I'm going to give it like a solid at least 7 or 8. Now let's talk about the other card. This is Vanquish Soul Snow Devil. It is a normal trap card that reads: reveal up to 3 monsters in your hand, 1 dark, 1 earth, 1 fire. Apply these effects in sequence based on the numbers revealed. 1. Inflict 400 to your opponent, and then you can special summon a Vanquish Soul monster from your hand. 2. Inflict 600 to your opponent. Also, Vanquish Soul monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects this turn. 3. Inflict 800 to your opponent, then destroy all monsters on the field. You can only activate one Snow Devil effect per turn, and each once per turn. This card is fantastic. This card is a 10 out of 10. So the first thing you need to know about this card and what makes it really good is that it can special summon a Vanquish Soul from your hand. And that's a really, really, really big deal, because one issue that Vanquish Soul has had in the past is that they're really reliant on the Rock of the Vanquisher just to summon a Vanquish Soul monster. And once your opponent like picks apart your board and they try to play around stuff like the Rock of the Vanquisher, stuff like Forbidden Droplets, Imperm, like a Kaiju, like getting stuff that gets the rock out of the board, like you're already exposed to a lot of weaknesses, and your plays are a lot less stronger and significant because you don't have a way to siphon a Vanquish Soul monster from your hand outside of the rock. Now with Snow Devil being a part of the game, now your opponent has 2 obstacles to worry about that can just summon you a Vanquish Soul. So in the off chance they just try to play around the rock, they still have to play around Snow Devil. Another really cool thing about Snow Devil is that Snow Devil is revealing for its effect. So if you have Jiaolong in your hand, you can summon Jiaolong alongside the Vanquish Soul that you're already summoning, meaning that you're just starting to amass card advantage and like just prepping more cards for your opponent to deal with. And if you end up like summoning Razin, for example, you can end up like doing Razin effect, add another attribute, use Jiaolong, and if it's a fire attribute, just reveal it to just grab another card, and you just start snowballing advantage. No pun intended. Another really strong thing about this card is that like if you can get to all three attributes, you just board nuke wipe to your opponent. And one other thing to mention is that this protects your Vanquish Soul monsters. One other issue that Vanquish Soul has on the has had in the past is when your opponent just use mad board wipe cards like Raigeki or Darkhole, and they just start wiping your board and just getting rid of all your monsters. Like, this card also fixes that issue, meaning that now, pretty much that it makes it so your opponent is forced to battle if they want to get rid of your Vanquish Souls. And that's really, really problematic for them, because if you end up like keeping Rock of the Vanquisher, like they're forced to attack like the high attack monsters. And remember, Jiaolong can just reveal an attribute to just change the battle position of a monster. So now Vanquish Soul just becomes this really, really annoying deck where you just can't like outright kill them like in the turn, because they just have so many obstacles that you just have to play around. Also, like for the last effect, like board nuking, like this is just really, really powerful if it resolves. Like, if you end up having all three attributes, this card can just end up being a blowout against your opponent. It pretty much makes it so any combo deck that just tries to go second against your board really has to worry about this card. Yeah, like at first glance, I saw everybody in the OCG like playing this card and literally using this card as part of like their starting play, and I was wondering why. Like, I thought in hindsight a card like Trinity Burst was going to be a lot better in this deck. However, like after like analyzing, seeing the effects, and seeing this card in action, I can wholeheartedly understand why this card is really strong. This is like, I'd say both of these cards are really, really good. I think both there's really no like way to debate which one is better. It's really more inclined into like how you're starting out your plays and how your hands are shaping up and the cards that you already have on the board. Like, engine wise, Jiaolong is a lot better, but impact wise, like Snow Devil is a lot better. Now that I spoke about the two new cards, let's talk about stuff that now changes with Vanquish Soul. Now, because that we have both of these cards in the deck. So one really cool thing is now triple tactic thrust can be implemented in the main deck. If you've seen past deck profiles that I've done with Vanquish Soul, I've only played this card once in the main deck, and it was because I was playing Trinity Burst. Not many people like this card. I think now that we have another Vanquish Soul name, this card is just a lot more stronger and a lot more impactful, because now what we have is an easier way of using this card and just like picking apart your opponent's board more consistently. Another really cool thing is that, like, if your opponent hand traps you and they don't control a monster, this can now set either Trinity Burst or Snow Devil, meaning that you have a play for the following turn. Another really good thing that changes about the deck is that now you have more fire attributes that are just like functionable in your main deck, meaning that if you want to like pick apart your opponent's board, for example, with Rosin, you are now not forced to just add Pluton to your hand. You can now add the Jiaolong, use Rosin's effect, pop something on your opponent's column, and then just use Jiaolong's effect and just special summon the Jiaolong, and you just keep going. Another really cool thing is that if you open Rosin and any fire monster, now you have a combo where you can just start adding cards to your hand each turn. And if you have whatever attribute you're missing, if you're missing just one attribute, you can just have all three effects of Snow Devil like already online. You already have like a lot of things you can do against your opponent. Like, one of the main plays that you used to do in this deck are like going Rosin into Mad Love and Mad Love into adding one of the spell and traps. But now you have a lot more options. You have a lot more like advantages that you can do. There's a lot more things that the deck can do now. Like, this deck is just a lot more dynamic at the things that it can do, like both going first and going second. Another really cool thing about this deck is that now it has the ability to OTK even quicker. Like, just having a 24 body that can just summon itself for free is a really big deal. Like, and this just adding you like other big monsters that you can use. You can just start like cycling through your effects. You have a lot more resiliency now, like for follow-up plays in this deck. This deck is still weak to stuff like talents and thrust. However, now you have a lot more obstacles. Now, like, your deck is a lot more flexible at the things it can do. I already brought up that you have more fires for Stake Your Soul, so now Stake Your Soul is a lot more consistent in like starting out your plays. Like, overall, I think Vanquish Soul is in a really, really good spot right now. I think if you were a dedicated Vanquish Soul player, like, you should really look into these cards. I think, like, Age of Overlord has revealed or like supported a lot of themes, and we've already seen this deck in action. This deck has like reached the final of two YCSs and has also reached the final of a nationals at the same weekend this deck got released. So this is not like, it's not like the most meta deck out there, but it is really a good contender, and like all these cards that are just supporting the theme are just going to make that like more and more possible. Like, but yeah, that's it from me. I hope you found this video informative. I hope you found this to your understanding and to your liking. I might do more deck profiles involving Vanquish Soul in the future. Right now, I just want to focus like in the set as a whole, because Age of Overlord is just a game-changing set in general, and like I want to be familiarized with a lot more strategies before like making a final consensus of one deck like I would pick as my main deck moving forward. But I think Vanquish Soul is a really, really, really good pick, especially for those dedicated players that have been playing the deck since its inception. But yeah, that's it from me. Keep practicing and keep dueling.